What was your first impression of Josh Allen?
Well, you know what? I don't know if I've met anybody that's more competitive. He's a guy that he wears an S on his chest. He wants to lead other people. He's got an infectious personality, but the overriding, I guess, characteristic that I've always really admired is he's an ultra competitive guy. It doesn't matter whether it's tiddlywinks or whatever. He desperately wants to win, and I'd say he's in the top 0.00%, 0.001% on that.
What amazes me is that everybody I've talked to talks about how confident he is in himself and through the whole process. And it's a little surprising to me to hear for a kid to come out of Firebaugh, from which everything I've heard has one stoplight and a Burger King, and nobody recruits anybody out of there. No, he was a 0-star recruit, no D1 offers out of high school, yet he was still so confident in himself. Were you surprised by how confident Josh is at all times?
No, not really. I mean, he showed that the first time we ran him out there on the field. And, it wasn't, there's not a stage that's too big for him. He definitely is always on the attack. And I think those are some characteristics that he's had that was part of his DNA. I mean, he's got great parents. They're competitive people, but also instilled a great deal of confidence within him. Certainly not every day and every game has been a Chamber of Commerce day for him. And what I've always appreciated about him is maybe if he's not had his best performance, he's the first one to own that. And he's not afraid to hop back in the fight and improve and play better the next game.
Absolutely. What was your first impression of his tape or maybe his skill set?
Well, Coach Vegan really did a great job with him and vetted out, where our next quarterback is going to come from. And what you saw was just his tremendous athleticism. Also, you did see his competitive nature, a common theme that I've seen on every tape, whether high school, junior college, for us, when he was running the scout team, when he was hurt, or some of the things he's done in the NFL. I mean, he's not going to back down or be afraid of any situation. Sometimes I'd always cringe when I see him break into the open field and hurdle somebody. And, sometimes he does have an S on his chest, but it's easier to say, whoa, than giddy up.
Was there ever a moment that clicked with you when you thought, whoa, this guy could play on Sundays? Like, this guy has the skill set, to really be an NFL quarterback. Was there ever a moment that stood out to you?
Yeah, I would say in between, he came in and he played one game when we first had him, and then he was hurt. And so he redshirted, but it was during the course of that summer. And then I saw in fall camp, the velocity on the football I thought was unusual. I mean, you could hear it. And he had arm strength that was pretty unique. And I knew at that time, while I have not coached in the NFL, I've coached against a lot of players who have played quarterback in the NFL. And some of the throws that I saw him make were very much on par with some of the great NFL quarterbacks that I'd seen. And so what it was going to be is just refining that skill. Coach Vegan did a great job when he was here, and I think the Bills have improved on that, and he's going to continue to get better. I think the arrow for him is just going to continue to go up.
So funny, one of the first players I talked to about Josh when he was drafted was Eddie Yarborough, because they were there at the same time. And I asked him, and Eddie told just an amazing story about how they used to tee off on scout team quarterbacks. And they go, all of a sudden, Josh threw a ball that whizzed by everybody's head. And then all of a sudden everybody went, hey, maybe we don't hit this kid. Like, maybe this kid's something special, right?
Well, that was that time that we talked about. And I just remember we were in the midst of a lot of change over here, in the midst of kind of a challenging year, but you knew the future looked bright because I saw all those plays he was making on the scout team. And Eddie's a pretty perceptive guy. And Josh has got great respect amongst all his teammates.
You also coached Carson Wentz, correct, at North Dakota?
Right, North Dakota State.
North Dakota State. Similarities with leadership, or not necessarily, I'm not asking you to compare their play, but just kind of their personalities?
Sure. Well, first of all, their stature. I mean, they certainly passed the eyeball test. I mean, both of them are about 6'5" and 240 pounds. Great arm strength. I would say this is, and I was asked a million times about the strengths about both of them. Carson is a guy that's very analytical. He crunches numbers. He's a guy that when you put him out there on the field, he's almost like a computer making all these decisions. And Josh is much more of a gunslinger. There's times that you have science and you have art, and you see Josh sometimes will make some plays that don't exactly fit into the schematic of what the play is supposed to look like, but it certainly comes out on the good end. So both of them are outstanding players. It's not by chance. I think the hardest thing to do in all sports is to play quarterback in the NFL, and it was neat for me to see both of them take their teams into the playoffs this last year.
Coach, what was Coach Vegan talked about how tough that junior year was for Josh, just that he was pulled in a lot of different directions, obviously with the NFL media and the hype that was starting to build. And he said he learned a lot from that year, handling scrutiny. Do you think that year, kind of coming back, do you think that helped Josh out a lot?
Well, without question, because Josh and Brent and I had a great deal of conversations about his decision to return. And, Josh graduated from the University of Wyoming. And sometimes when you're an emerging player, you're just out there making plays. And the next thing now you're transitioning to somebody who has a target on their back. And so teams really schemed some things up. I thought Josh grew through that. Adversity is going to make you stronger. He completed not his senior year, but his last year with us, and he played in our bowl game. A lot of players will pass on their bowl game, and he had every rationale. He had I think a separated shoulder, and yet that shows the type of teammate he was. And I really think his performance in our bowl game and how he handled that adversity, that all those things, the NFL is a man's league played by men. And, he's grown up. And that year really, I think, helped him go through the good times and some times that were not as pleasant. And so he certainly survived that. And I think you're going to see that's going to be a hallmark for him as he continues to play in the NFL.
I know you're busy on weekends and you're going over stuff too, but have you gotten a chance to see Josh, and what has it been like getting to see him grow up on Sundays, and take a team to, the playoffs?
Well, you're exactly right. Our Sundays are usually pretty busy with preparation, but I've had a chance to go down the hall and pop my head in, or sometimes be able to watch. I had a chance to watch the Cowboys game and see how I'm performed in that stage and watch them in the playoffs. There's a real sense of I wouldn't say satisfaction is necessarily the term, but feel like, we had a small part in his development, and it's been neat to see him continue to grow. I am convinced that he's going to have a great long career in the NFL, and he's going to continue to get better and better.
What is your best Josh Allen story? Whether it's on the field, off the field, in a meeting, on a flight, on a bus ride, was there any story that
Yeah, I have one. We were in the middle of a spring scrimmage, and there was a play that was designed for a bootleg to throw the fullback out in the flat. And so we were doing the spring scrimmage, and the fullback was wide open in the flat, and he pulled the ball down and did not throw the ball to the fullback in the flat. He threw a backside post, a rope route, I don't know, about 65 yards for a touchdown. And so, it's one of those things, okay, that's a good play, Josh, but the rule is to throw the ball to the fullback in the flat. And he said, no, Coach, Brett Favre says touchdowns first. And I said, I don't care about Brett Favre, throw the ball to the fullback.
Brett Favre throws touchdown. That's pretty good.
That's where he's at.
Awesome. I really appreciate this, Coach. It's just cool to get a perspective on who Josh was before he was in Buffalo and stuff.
Well, he's one of it's always dangerous to say you have favorite players, but his mentality changed our whole culture here into a winning culture.
Says a lot, and I think he's doing that in Buffalo too. So I really appreciate it, Coach. Stay safe. Thank you so much for this, and take care.
Okay, bye now.